All right. So my name is Emily Shakespeare, and you're all very welcome to this event called Ripples of Resilience, where we'll be exploring the impact of fire and water sustainability in African landscapes. And we're very excited in LRG because this is the first time we're going in this direction. So you're very welcome to see this. So first off, just some housekeeping. The event's being recorded, so I'll be able to put it up online afterwards onto our website. We've got a couple of live presentations and 2 are recorded. So we're going to go through the presentations and then have a bit of a discussion, hopefully, at the end. So if you think of any questions as you go along, please put them into the chat box at the bottom. And as always, my sales pitch, please do consider becoming an LRG member. It supports us to support you, and you can access our network of like-minded researchers and practitioners. So this event is the initiative and been organised by Dr. Murham Kellig. She works at the Anne Shimes University in Cairo, in the Department of Urban Planning, though currently she's been more acclimatised to the very cold weather in Berlin, where she's doing a fellowship in TU Berlin. Okay, so thank you very much, Murham, for getting this going, and I'm going to pass over to you now, and you can do the instructions.
Yeah, hello, welcome everyone, and we are very thrilled to welcome you all today for our LRG annual event for the year of 2023. This year, actually, we are discovering new ventures for us here at LRG, getting to know and discover more about African landscapes, which we are really passionate and thrilled about, actually. Africa is known for its rich and beautiful landscapes, yet it faces various ecological, social, and political challenges. And water-related challenges are ranked as top global risks, while Africa is considered one of the most prone to water scarcity, challenges threatening its social and economic development as well as its political stability. On the other hand, Africa is one of the longest history of human use of fire, which is the inherent opposite of water. So in this context, we'd like to welcome you all today to explore more about these topics through the talks of our esteemed guests today. We have Bilal, Manal, Gabi, and Aziz, who will guide our journey today. And first, we will start with Bilal. Just little introduction before he speaks. If you allow me, Dr. Bilal Adam Ismail is a postdoctoral researcher at the Institute of Geography, Ruhr University at Bochum, Germany. If I spelled right, excuse my German. His research focuses on planning nature-based solutions and green infrastructure for sustainable urban transformations, with special attention to water challenges. And I think I can give the floor to you, Bilal.
Thank you very much, Murham, for the nice introduction, and thank you, Emily, for having me here, and all of you for being here with us. It's a Friday afternoon. Yeah, so I wasn't quite sure that I could make it in person today, so I had kind of recorded my presentation. So I will play it now, and I will be available for the discussion part later on. Just tell me if you can see my slides.
Yeah.
And
Okay, Bilal, yeah, that looks all good.
The sound is a bit far.
Do you hear the sound?
No, it's very faint.
Yeah.
No, can't hear it.
That's still very faint, Bilal. Are you able to increase it a little?
So let me maybe.
When you were sharing, did you, they might have to do a share in the options for audio as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Does that option come up?
Now? Assessing ecosystem services as a key tool
A bit better, but still faint.
sustainable and resilient policy and decision making.
Again, a bit better. It's getting better each time.
Getting better.
Whatever you're doing, keep doing.
To illustrate my key points, I will be using the case study of Eritrea in Africa. And through this case study, I aim to underscore the common challenges we encounter all over Africa and worldwide, and discuss potential approaches to not only address these challenges, but also thrive in the face of adversity. So the premise of this particular study is that addressing the triple planetary crisis of climate, nature, and pollution will require transformative policies and decision-making at the national and subnational levels, underpinned by a thorough understanding and knowledge of key ecosystems, their conditions, and recent change, and their link to human well-being. Against the backdrop of environmental decline, the notion of ecosystem services has emerged as a pivotal conceptual and practical tool. This concept gained momentum starting in the 1980s and notably surged in prominence from the late 1990s onwards. Ecosystem services have made significant inroads into global policy discussion, leading to various global and regional assessments concerning the status and functions of ecosystems and their services. This assessment ranged from the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment to the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity, culminating in the formation of organizations such as the Intergovernmental Platform for Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, or IPBES. More specifically, this study responds to a request for ecosystem service mapping and assessment studies by the IPBES Regional Assessment for Africa. The report recognized that Africa's extraordinary wealth of biodiversity and ecosystem services represent a strategic asset for the continent's sustainable development. However, it also highlighted the lack of scientific studies needed to inform sustainable governance and policy options. Moreover, our study adheres to the recently approved system of environmental economic accounting, ecosystem accounting, which provides a framework for organizing data about habitat and landscapes, measuring ecosystem services, tracking changes in ecosystem assets, and linking to economic and other human activity. So within this context, and focusing on the East African sub-region, the objective of the study was to map and assess the dynamics of key ecosystems and their services to inform sustainable policy and decision-making in Eritrea. Our study was driven by three research questions. First, what is the relevant institutional, policy, and legal context for an application of MIS in Eritrea? Second, how have Eritrean ecosystems changed recently? And third, what impacts might the change have caused on the potential supply of key ecosystem services? Our methodology consisted of 3 key steps. In the first step, we reviewed relevant documents and databases to characterize the institutional, policy, and legal context that is relevant for biodiversity issues in Eritrea, and accordingly selected 10 key ecosystem services to consider in the study. In the second step, we analyzed yearly land cover changes during the period 2015-2019 based on Copernicus Global Land Cover. Finally, in the third step, we applied the matrix approach to map the potential supply of the selected 10 ecosystem services for the years 2015 and 2019. The potential supply and changes were assessed at national and subnational levels. We used open source software, QGIS, and R. So the country of Eritrea, located in the Horn of Africa, arguably represents a suitable case study for advancing MIS, mapping and assessment of ecosystem services, approaches, and methods, as it provides a diverse set of ecosystems and typical challenges of data scarcity in a relatively small spatial context, vis-a-vis a strong sustainability orientation of national policies. So on one hand, land degradation and desertification are the most serious and widespread environmental problems in the country, compounded by rapid urbanization and the impact of climate change. On the other hand, a key priority for the government has been sustainable land water management, promoted through an ambitious greening and ecological restoration campaign and related soil and water conservation measures. Eritrea has a 4-tier governance system comprising national, regional, sub-regional, and community level. The country is divided into 6 administrative regions and 57 sub-regions. The regions roughly represent the main river basins of the country, while the population varies from 1.4 million in the Zobadebub to 398,000 in the arid Zobadebub area. We identified 54 relevant policy documents, including the Constitution, the National Charter, and the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan. While the main actors responsible for the most of biodiversity issues are the Ministry of National Development, the Ministry of Land, Water and Environment, and the Forestry and Wildlife Authority. Implementation is mainly under the ZOBA administration and is coordinated by the Ministry of Local Government in cooperation with other ministries. Moving to our second research question, this slide shows the distribution of land cover in Eritrea and its change over the period of 2015-2019. As you can see, half of the country's land cover is bare soil or sparse vegetation, and forests occupy only a limited percentage. In absolute terms, the largest increases are in herbaceous vegetation at the expense of bare soil, while the highest increases in percentage terms are recorded for wetlands. At the regional level, the largest increase is recorded for herbaceous vegetation in Seminau and Bahari. On a percentage basis, on the other hand, the greatest increases are recorded for wetlands and water bodies in Gashbarka and Makel region. Similarly, this slide shows the absolute and percentage changes at the sub-regional level, using the example of the Makel region, which is the smallest and most densely populated region that hosts the capital city, Asmara. Note, for example, the increase in open forests and wetlands in the sub-Serija sub-region. This change can arguably be associated to the successes of a UNDP and GEF-supported sustainable land management project in Eritrea. We started in 2010 and now transforming the environmental ecosystems through an integrated land management approach. Moving to the third research question, the mapping and assessment of ecosystem services was carried out using the so-called matrix approach proposed by Bukhari et al. More precisely, we started from 109 case studies examined by Champagne et al., of which we selected 10 studies in climatic conditions similar to our case study. This allowed us to determine the minimum, average, and maximum values of the potential for the 10 ecosystem services with respect to the 11 ecosystems in the country. We mapped
10 ecosystem services, 4 provisioning, 4 regulating, and 2 cultural for the years 2015 and 2019, using the average and maximum values from the literature. We thus produced and further analyzed a total of 110 ecosystem service maps. So this slide shows the regional mean values of the ecosystem service supply potential in 2015 and 2019, as well as the changes recorded. Note the overall positive trend in the market increases in the Ansaba and Seminole regions. Similarly, at the sub-regional level, it's possible to highlight the ones with the greatest increase. So overall, our study offers several insights into sustainable policy and decision-making in Eritrea. We characterized the institutional, policy, and legal context relevant to biodiversity and ecosystem service issues. Most importantly, we have mapped and assessed key ecosystems and their services according to the 3 levels of governance in the country. This provides a good basis for assessing some of the existing policies, as well as evaluating ongoing projects in the country. One good example is the construction of dams for soil and water conservation. Since 1991, when the country gained its independence from Ethiopia, about 385 large and small dams have been built throughout the country, mainly with local resources, contributing significantly to ensuring water and food security. For 3 major dams, we here explore some of the potential links with the results of our analysis. Our study has a few limitations, including the fact that we use global land cover data at a resolution of 100 meters. We apply a tier 1 approach for mapping and assessing ecosystem services based on literature value and consider only a limited period of 5 years. So definitely a follow-up for this study should start with an adequate and meaningful involvement of local stakeholders and experts in all the different stages of the MIAS process. Also, applying more elaborate ecosystem service models with higher resolution spatial data and longer periods will also be crucial. We also see great opportunities for easily replicating the study in other countries in the region and beyond. In conclusion, our study proposed and applied an operational methodology based on open data and software. It offered key findings on dynamics of ecosystems and their services in Eritrea that can be integrated into the design of future planning policies. With appropriate involvement of key stakeholders, the proposed approach can help create new spaces for knowledge sharing and co-creation for the crafting of development and conservation policies, based on the concept of ecosystem services. Our hope is that this becomes a starting point for MIAS application in Eritrea and the Eastern Africa sub-region at large. Most importantly, we hope that this knowledge and data will serve the very people that call this part of the planet home. Thank you for your attention, also on behalf of my co-authors.
Yes, thank you very much. This was the. I hope you could hear that the sound improved along the way, but yeah, thank you for your attention and available for any comments or questions.
Thank you, Bilal, for a very interesting presentation. A bit low, but I think it was okay from my side. Thank you. I think we will get to the questions by the end of the 4 presentations, just to make things a bit more smoother. So now we will be giving the floor to Gabby. She's not with us today in flesh, but she has sent her pre-recorded talk. Gabby Jensen is a lecturer at the Department of Architecture, Planning and Construction, Namibia University of Science and Technology. Her research focuses on dryland nature-based solutions as an approach to co-create climate adaptation planning in arid regions of Namibia. Her talk will focus on a Brown approach to conceptualize a performative network of urban public space in semi-arid cities, the case of Windhoek, Namibia. So I think we'll give the floor to Gabby, virtually.
Yeah, okay. So can you see that? Has that come up okay?
Yes.
Great stuff. I'll just press play.
Greetings to everyone. My name is Gabi Hansen. I'm a lecturer, academic, researcher in the Department of Architecture, Planning and Construction at the Namibia University of Science and Technology. It is a privilege to present my ongoing research at this event. I apologize for not being able to present my work live in person, but I hope that the recording will do justice. In landscapes plagued by water scarcity, the earth speaks a language of dry resilience. Rivers reduce to whispers, and arid vistas echoing the urgent need for sustainable stewardship. In these water-scarce landscapes, every droplet becomes a narrative of adaptation, urging us to cultivate a future where the vitality of our environment flourishes against the backdrop of water scarcity. Today, I present you what I'm very passionate about, titled A Brown Approach to Conceptualize a Performative Network of Urban Public Space in Semi-Arid Cities, the case of Windhoek, Namibia. The concept of green is a fundamental element in the definition of green infrastructure, typically representing the green component that unify diverse elements, fostering cohesion and serving as a foundation for our environmental enhancement. And as we know that these specific spaces are Eurocentric, or the concept of green infrastructure has been developed in this particular areas, hence the idea of green and wet. However, the green concept and its application must be critically examined within the context of Global South, especially in areas or cities that are not green and wet, to determine its validity. Semi-arid and arid regions are characterized by predominantly dry and brown landscapes that are not green due to high temperatures and low rainfall. Despite this arid nature, the ecological system continues to function similarly to its green infrastructure counterpart, providing also multifunctionality and connectivity, hence why the brown and dry landscapes also matters. As a result, it is essential for the concept to adapt a contextual perspective by embracing dryland brown approaches. Windhoek, the capital city of Namibia, is situated in a semi-arid region marked by high temperatures and minimal rainfall. To comprehend the foundational landscape structure and composition of Windhoek, a thorough understanding of these natural systems is required as a basis to work from. So the following maps I have documented to showcase the characteristics at a macro scale. And these maps were important to showcase the various types of rocks, the various types of landforms, the hydrological system, and the various vegetated species. So, and this in itself gives you an idea of, you know, how harsh the environment is. So if you look at the geological aspects or the types that we find in Windhoek, you see it's very textured, hard, and brittle in some cases. Windhoek is situated in a valley and surrounded by mountains, so it means our spaces are developed or is positioned in a very hilly type of setting. Our hydrological system is also very important because if we think about green infrastructure, it also is part of this idea of creating connectivity through our natural features. And our rivers are not wet, it's ephemeral and very dry, but they still provide connectivity. And then our vegetation is also very important because it's indigenous, very hardy, and interesting plant species that should be utilized in our landscapes. As indicated by these two maps, Windhoek is not green nor wet. Rather, it is characterized by a brown and dry landscape. Therefore, embracing a brown approach specific to its unique context has the potential to create a network of interconnected, multifunctional, and appealing public open space network that reflects the inherent dry nature of the city. The research primarily focused on re-evaluating the significance of this color green in green infrastructure. So questioning what does that mean in our dry context. So the objective was first to embrace brown as a unique identity, providing a comprehensive guide for the planning and design of public open space networks in semi-arid cities. Second, develop an integrated brown infrastructure across the landscape to enhance connectivity and multifunctionality. And third, to provide a conceptual idea or visualization of how these various typologies could look like by embracing this unique character or this unique color brown. But first, a classification of types for public open spaces are established. So on the screen, you will see it was important to group these various types and then have subtypes. From the classification, a performative criterion for each typology was considered. And for each of these types, I looked at the functionality, the benefits that could be attained from these specific typologies, both from a natural and social economic aspect, and then also thinking about what design component or landscape element should be integrated for each of these particular typologies. So on the screen, you will see the typologies or types varies from very large parks to very small pockets and roadscapes. Also looking at from a very formal and informal perspective. From the classification and performative criteria, a brown infrastructure as a performative public space network for Windhoek is established and mapped accordingly. So in these images in front of you, you will see what I call brown infrastructure that connects the various typologies in various hues and representing the various typologies. And you will also see that the rivers, as I mentioned earlier, are natural connectors that connect the city from north to south. And yes, although a very ambitious attempt, it gives you an idea of the same concept that can be applied in a different context. So lastly, from the established performative criteria, 10 typologies of various scales and sizes were selected to visualize conceptual design for these typologies. The conceptual design phase employed photomontage techniques to explore and envision these spaces. This exploration incorporated different natural landscape methods such as xeriscaping, while building upon Windhoek's brown character, as can be seen in the following typologies, ranging from macro to micro, formal to informal. And this gives you an idea of just exploring and stepping into what is existing and emphasizing and embracing that character that's on the ground. To conclude, as we finish exploring the dry brown approach in arid landscapes, let's carry the lessons of resilience and innovation forward. In these arid environments where nature's colors are earthly, there's an invitation to rethink, adapt, and live in harmony with our surroundings. May this journey and this passion of mine inspire a future where sustainability flourishes, turning once challenging arid landscapes into canvases of ingenuity and prosperity. As I conclude this discussion, let the principles of the dry brown approach be seeds of transformation, growing into a more sustainable and harmonious coexistence with our arid world. And I thank you.
Okay, I think it's a really interesting approach from Gabby, and I agree with most of her propositions. Actually, I think some of them are very relevant to the context of Cairo, for example. But now, flying from the very south of Africa to the very north of Africa, we have Manal Waret Ledjouz. She is a teacher and researcher at the Department of Architecture, University of Béjaïa, Algeria. Manal will be focusing on the natural and cultural landscapes of Béjaïa and linking it to water and fire dynamics. So she will be the first to tackle on the fire aspect today for our talk. So the floor is yours, Manal.
So thank you, Merhan. Can everybody hear me and see my screen?
Yeah, well, good.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Let me introduce myself. As Merhan said, I'm Waret Ledjouz Manal. I'm a teacher researcher at the Department of Architecture at the University of Béjaïa in Algeria. I'm also a researcher and architect qualified of heritage, and my research focuses on the study of cultural and natural landscapes of Algeria. So I'm delighted to be here today. I'm thankful to LRG. Thank you, Merhan. Thank you, Emily, to inviting me to this event, to take part in this event, Ripples of Resilience. I'm here in order to give you a presentation which attempts to understand the transformation of landscape caused by the passage of time and human behavior through a hermeneutic approach. So here we go. With its size as a continental country of over 2 million kilometers square, its geographical position as the gateway of Africa, its 1,200 kilometer long coastline, its vast expanse of desert covering 84% of its country. Algeria, the largest country in Africa, has seen societies pass through its lands, which have played a role in all periods of human history. The landscape diversity that is typical of the area includes a large number of different natural components. These landscapes offer significant potential in terms of biodiversity and provide a remarkable opportunity to promote genuine sustainable development. In Algeria, we have only 7 cultural landscapes classified as World Heritage of Humanity on the list of UNESCO. Like you are saying here, so don't believe what you are saying. So these are not cells under microscopes or artistic paintings, but landscapes of central and southern Algeria taken by European Space Agency's Sentinel-2 satellites in February 2023. Yeah, this variety of colors are synonymous with geological and mineral and topographical wealth of the country. But also the cradle of the civilization, as you can see here on the site of NASA Earth. In terms of biodiversity, I take the case of forests. So in 2018, the DGF, Direction Générale des Forêts, gives the number of 4 million hectares of forests. In an article written by Le Monnier in 1881 entitled L'Algérie, we have an estimate of 2 million hectares of forests due to reforestation efforts despite the various fires that occurred during this period. The main species in these forests are coke oak, green oak, pine, and cedar. Algeria is semi-arid or even arid country. For example, we have 200 to 400 millimeters of rain, and water resources are limited, irregular, and localized in the coastal strip. For information, total rainfall is estimated to around 100 billion cubic meters of water per year. And for one of the climate change scenarios, which consist of 1 degree Celsius rise in temperature and a 15% drop in rainfall, for example, for 2020, the year of 2020, there would be a 30% shortfall in surface water supply, which is enormous. As a result, in landscape terms, this heritage remains under considerable threat, not only from climate change and human behavior, but also from natural disasters such as in Algeria, we have earthquakes, dryness, fires, and floods, all of which entail obvious risk for biodiversity and landscape identity. For example, Algeria has always suffered from this fire. And according to the archives, there have been reported fires, notably in 2 centuries, like the 17th and 18th century, and starting from 1860, the year 1864, we have recorded fires with reporting statistics and damages. In the same article, we have also recorded in 1879 220 fires, which destroying 18,000 hectares of forest. Here we are in the richest and most populous part of Algeria. The country of the Kabyle is mountainous, covered with forests and fields. We have chosen Béjaïa as our case study. It's located in northern Algeria, on the coast, 250 kilometers east of the capital Algiers. It has been described by many travelers and geographers as being very old. So before, after destruction, here and through a hermeneutic study, of the text and iconography, I have tried to understand the sequences and causes that lead to the transformation of these landscapes after each destruction. In the Middle Ages, Béjaïa was considered to be a rich, strong, and prosperous city. It was well built, and its inhabitants were all wealthy merchants with excellent education and training. This urban genius was the city's response of the needs of its inhabitants in terms of comfort, economic development, social independence, and the sustainability of its natural resources. The city was rich in local resources, like abundance of building materials, such as clay and wood, the existence of good rainfall, protection of the seed from the prevailing winds, combined with the cultural needs of the inhabitants, provision, privacy, and thus led to the projection of an urban landscape as a response to the needs that characterize the medieval city. Like you can see here, we have antique and medieval engravings. Then you can see here on the tabula of Puttinger in antiquity, we have natural or permanence of natural features, such this river here. You can also see this river, which we call in the past in antiquity Wad el-Kabir, or also today Soumam River here also, and the wooded forest surrounding the fortified city of Béjaïa. So Béjaïa was a fortress which was surrounded by forests and mountains, and here in paintings we have coke oak and pine and cedar, etc. So this cultural landscape has undergone a number of destructions through multiple occupations. mainly since the Spanish occupation in 1500. Since then, the urban landscape, even the cultural landscape and the natural landscape has been transformed until the basic unit, which is a dwelling house with its garden. During the Turkish occupation, the town suffered the fate of abandon for 3 centuries due to the high cost of the repairs that had to be carried out. The text often reveals the picturesque aspect of the landscape due to its state of ruin. Then came French colonization, which lasted for a century and a half. Here we have tried to draw up a hermeneutic of a destructive fire that ravages Béjaïa in 1884, as described by a French traveler, Guy de Maupassant, and to interpret the emotions felt by the author and his description of the blazing landscape. As a mental image, the burnt landscape of Béjaïa seemed from afar to be an ancient insight, marvelously reflected in the calm water of the vast basin surrounded by the fairy coastline. However, the closer he got, the more horrible his feelings became, and the landscape seemed to be suffocated in monstrous darkness. And as estimated damage in the text, we have 50,000 hectares of forest were damaged in the text. So, in view of the damage caused in Algeria by these fires, the French government promulgated a law on July 1874, and on the fourth article of which read as follows. During the period from 1st July to 1st November, the indigenous population in the forest regions shall be subject under the penalties and surveillance service, which shall be regulated by the Governor General. So we have here probable causes. We have listed probable causes recorded during the French colonial period. We have such an average coastal temperature which achieved 26 degrees in 1866. We have also pollution which releases flammable gases. We have carences on the part of smokers and hunters, and deliberate malicious fires. So we noticed that warnings about this had already been issued in this, started from this year. So the dryness of the watercourses was another phenomenon or another problem that affected the Béjaïa landscape during colonization. In this painting, we can see that the river reached the Roman ruins that you can see here in red square. But today there is very little water left in the river, which was navigable in antiquity. And with the red line here was the limit of the river. And like you can see here, we have no river, we have no water, we have just field and forest. A few kilometers to the south, on another painting, we can see the abundance of flourishing vegetation, the vegetation watered by the river, also always the same river, as well as the lush olive grove. Today, on a recent Google Earth map here, urbanization has completely eroded the bucolic landscape and there is nothing left in the river bed. Another catastrophic flood in 1957, we have here floods that damages bridges, metal, and even old stone bridges of antiquity, like you can see here on the photos and videos on the news. And finally, another phenomenon has also transformed Béjaïa's landscape over 2,000 years. The setting up of the Béjaïa coast over a strip 25 kilometers long and 600-meter wide due to the deposition of silt generated by 2 rivers located on their side of this coast, here and here, which has completely erased a Roman settlement which was established here at this point. Beyond, before, and after destruction, how to imagine today new landscapes for Béjaïa? The colonial period was fatal for Algeria's forest heritage. Over a period of 87 years, from 1876 to 1962, more than 3 million hectares were burned. and an average of 41,000 hectares per year. In contrast to the area covered by fire, the frequency of fires has continued to increase, rising from an average of 400 fires per year to an average to 1,400 fires per year. The toll or the result or the consequence or the damage has been very heavy during the fire period of the last 3 years to 2021, from 2021 to 2023 in Algeria and especially at Béjaïa. And the statistics and the numbers are horrifying in terms of human and material loss. Since then, Algeria has made no effort to reforest, build dams, or desalinate seawater. But the human loss is irrecoverable. Effort must be made today to learn from Algeria's glorious past. In the habits of collective cleaning up of neighborhoods, street clearing, ecology, respect for nature, agricultural know-how and irrigation, but also by raising awarenesses and educating society in schools, universities, streets, villages, and even in forests. So well, this brings me to the end of presentation. Thank you for your attention. I will be happy to answer to your questions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Manal. It's truly fascinating, actually, all of this happening in Algeria. I didn't know that fires get back to that old in centuries, so thank you for that today. And last but not least, we have Professor Aziz Balouch. He is with us, I think, still. No, but he has sent his pre-recorded presentation as well. He has shaky internet connection today, so just to be sure, we have his presentation. Professor Aziz Balouch is at the University of Angers in France. His research focuses on environmental and landscape dynamics on different time scales in terms of the role of climatic variations and anthropogenic processes in the dynamics of savanna landscapes in West Africa. His talk today is entitled The Long-Term Perspective at different time scales to question bushfire as a dynamic factor in West African savanna landscapes. He will mainly be talking about fires in the savanna area of Africa. So I think, Emily, you can begin.
Yeah, that looks okay. Yep.
Yeah, all
Okay.
good.
Bonjour, hello everyone. I first like to start by apologizing for my absence live at this meeting on fire and water landscape in Africa, and I like also to thank my colleagues from the landscape research group for this invitation. I must also ask your indulgence for my English. Sorry, I speak French, Arabic, Berber, and German, but I am completely autodidact in English as well as in some African language, Bambara or Wolof. So the data that I'm going to present to you here are based on around 30 years of research in West Africa, mainly in the field of the Sudanian and Sahelian savannas in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Senegal. And these 30 years have allowed me to know and to study the landscape of the West African savanna, working more especially on their history and long-term change. The history of the West African savannas is determining by factors, natural factors, climate, water disponibility, and also fire. Fire is one of the ecological factor of the transformation and evolution of the savanna landscape. I have therefore worked in the 20 last years, particularly on the role of fire, but in current savanna landscape, but also in their recording their information in the sedimentary archives during the Quaternary. So the data that I'm going to present to you quickly today are based on this work. And this work is in collaboration with many other colleagues, African or European, but in particular with my doctoral student here, shortly cited, Hélène Dolidon, Françoise Valéa from Burkina Faso, Yann Le Drezen, Sébastien Caillot, Aline Garnier, Mathilde Stern, and also Emmanuel Weisskopf. Firstly, we must remember what fire represents in the savanna landscape and savanna environment. When we look at this map of the distribution of fire, we can compare them to the distribution of savanna in Africa. We realize that there is a sort of identity or equivalence between the space of fire and the space of savanna, and especially in the Sudanian domain in West Africa. Fire is an element permanently present in the functioning of the savanna environment in West Africa. And from the point of view of some geographers, this is what I think it is even a defining element of the savanna landscape. It's an identity element in the savanna landscape. To fully understand what we are going to talk about in this talk, it is perhaps important first to define what is a savanna, what is a savanna landscape. And a savanna is a type of vegetation which correspond to trees more or less regularly scattered in a grassy layer. This grassy layer, this layer of grass, is very, very important. It is more or less continuous grass layer, which is the characteristic of the savanna landscape. In the savanna, in the Sudanian savanna especially, it is therefore this grass layer which constitutes the fuel for fire, for this bush fire. The existence and the continuity of the grass layer will allow or not the presence and especially the circulation, the propagation of fires. There is therefore a close link between this grass layer, a close link with the physiognomy of the vegetation, which explains the presence or propagation of fire. In the climatic condition of in the Sudanian domain in West Africa, but also in the Sahelian domain, the occurrence of a long dry season and also sufficiently significant rain is necessary to allow the presence of sufficient biomass, which constitute a potential flammable fuel. The significant rainfall allows to grow the growth and the abundance of the grassy vegetation, and at the same time, the long dry season allows this grass to be combustible during the dry season. Under these two conditions, the fire are omnipresent in the Sudanian savanna. If we look now at the long term, the history of fire over the last 100,000 years during the Pleistocene, during this middle and upper Quaternary, we see that in the African tropical domain, the fire the fires are directly controlled by the paleoclimatic condition. For example, in the Sahara today, we are in desert condition. There are no fire in the desert. But if you see these documents, the authors cited here show that fire spread in the head of the Sahara, in the central and occidental Sahara during the time when in humid conditions, the savanna extends in the Sahara. You have here these periods marked by this peak of fire signal, and fire could appear regularly in conditions that today are totally unfavorable for spreads of fire. During dry periods, the desert returned, and there was no more fire, therefore, depending on paleoclimatic condition and the development condition of the savanna vegetation. Fire can actually appear over a long time in the savanna context. If we look now to the example of an area of Sudanian savanna here on the Pew Plateau in Nigeria, this example of vegetation history during the last 11,000 years in this pollen diagram produced by Ulrich Salzmann in the Lake Tilia, you see the presence of fire during all the Holocene period. You see here marked in yellow, the grass are dominant. We are
Scusami, ero io che ti ho chiamato.
in the condition of an open savanna, even during the wettest periods, the humid periods of the middle Holocene. The presence, this continuous presence of grass show that savanna is still present over the last 11 millennia. And you see here indicated in red, the charcoal particles are still present and therefore indicate that fire exists regularly in this savanna during the Holocene. However, we have no evidences of human occupation in this area. And so what appears above all is that fire is an element always present in the savanna. Here we have another example here from Senegal, from Western Senegal in the Bolon region, near the megalithic archaeological site of Wana. You see here too that despite the climate change during the 5,000 last years, the vegetation changed, but we were still in a context of Sudanian environment and fire here on the right side of the diagram. It existed during the last 5 millennia without us being able to see a direct impact of human activity also during the period of the megalithic megalithic occupation. Example is here in the Dogon country in Mali, and we have here a diagram of phytoliths analysis carried by Aline Garnier in his thesis, and this diagram show a little more than 5,000 year savanna vegetation, first in a Sudanian context 5,000 years ago, and by 2,000 years, a very clear aridification of the landscape. The landscape become more and more Sahelian. The signal of fires marked here by burned phytoliths visible at the level of the red arrow show that we already have a change in the fire regime from 2000 years ago. If we want to interpret this data, this phytoliths data in terms of landscape, we can see first around 4,000 years ago, we had a landscape that was in humid Sudanian savanna vegetation with fire circulating irregularly. Then 3,000 years, we have a first climate change toward drier conditions, but where the vegetation remains present and where fire is also active. During this period, by 3,000, 3,500 years, we also have indication of agriculture and human activity clearly marked in the landscape. 2,000 years ago, there was a drastic change in the environment, a very dry period with less human occupation. And during this period, the fire will disappear due to a lack of fuel. Then, 1,000 years ago, conditions became a little wetter, little more humid, but we are now in a Sahelian context, and it is human activities, agriculture mostly, that use fire in this landscape. And this use of fire by human activities is gradually disappearing. Today, in a context of a very, very strong agricultural intensification and intensification, the fire is totally absent due to the absence of fuel, since the entire landscape is highly anthropized. This is an example of the current landscapes today in the Dogon country. Fields everywhere, and therefore no more room, no more place for fire. The example of Burkina Faso illustrates clearly this current situation of fires in Sudanian Africa. You see here that the fire has a contrasting distribution in Burkina Faso. The areas that burn the most are national parks and protected areas. The vegetation in these areas is well developed, and so there is flammable fuel for fires. In the center of the country, in the Mossi country, this is a relatively densely populated areas. You see that there are no more fires. You can see here an example of these two regions. First, here in the traditional Bissa terroir in southeast Burkina, there are fields and fallows, and fire occurs mainly in the fallows surface. Here in the center of the country, in this relatively saturated terroirs in the Mossi country, in a context of intensive cultivation of the terroir, there are no more fallows and no more fire. You can see in this image in South Senegal, this relatively close link between in the savanna, Sudanian savanna in West Africa, this link between fallows and fire, and in the context of relatively extensive agricultural system, there is fuel for the fire, but in the case of the intensification of the agriculture, there are no more place for fire. is what we call the savanna paradox, the paradox of savanna fires. You see here in this maps that while in many parts of the world, wildfires are increasing in the Sudanian Africa and mostly in West Africa, they are decreasing. This is a paradox. Well, less vegetation and more fragmented landscape is an obstacle for fire spread. This paradox, this savanna paradox, is that explain that highly fragmented landscape or landscape subject to desertification burn less and less. And we have a relatively provocative expression that a savanna, good developed savanna, is a savanna that burns. So, in conclusion, we therefore see how over the last few thousand years during the Upper Quaternary, from Pleistocene to Holocene, we have moved from a completely natural climatic fire regimes in the Pleistocene and during the Holocene, partly controlled by human practice. And we can say in the present days, in the Anthropocene, fire decreasing subject to environmental concern. This fire are mainly controlled by the land and environment management. For example, that national parks burn, but other regions are have no more fire today. Thank you very much for.
Thank you, Aziz, for a very educating talk from my side. I think it's the first time I hear a talk about fires and its environmental aspects. Thank you a lot. So I think it in a way it brings us back to Blal's talk in the beginning, you know, linking land management with fire, water desertification, and water challenges. So I think it's all interlinked in a way, and policy is important in such discussions. And I think also community engagement is another aspect that we can link for, but it's apparently Africa is, lots is happening in Africa everywhere environmentally, and also impacts of landscape changes are influencing everything in this kind of landscapes. So I think we can open the floor for any questions and discussions from the audience, and also we have a couple of questions in the chats. We can also, you know, discuss them.
So if I read out one that's kind of, I hope I pronounce this correctly, Maimuna Salibala, I think she's still here. She has the concept of brown infrastructure is very interesting. However, how can we achieve adequate carbon sequestration in the era of climate change? Shall I throw that out? It's a shame we don't have Gabby.
Gabby, yeah, but I think I can discuss it with you, Maimuna, if it's because I think about it the same when people ask about, you know, more yellowish transformation, if we'll call it yellow or brown, in water, you know, challenged context. I think Cairo is also on the verge of such challenge right now. And for me, I always see it's the type of green that we should embrace rather than not embracing green at all. So I think trees are very crucial in such context. So It doesn't have to be grass and lawns and shrubs and, you know, the European and Western landscape character. We can also embrace brown, but also have greens in trees, you know. And just by chance, yesterday I saw a post from COP28. The FAO actually was holding a session called Trees in Dry Cities, Luxury or a Fundamental Climate and SDG Solution. And I think it talked a lot, you know, it touched me a lot. And I agree with this notion. We should focus more on trees rather than copying this Western landscape character. And we'll still have it yellow and brown, and it will be with less water consumptions, but we'll still have all the benefits of you know, carbon sequestration, even more shading in our harsh climates. So yeah, that's from my side, but we can also send the question to Gabby and she can happily get to you back. And if any of the other panelists have a say in it, please join me.
Yes, maybe. So first of all, apologies for the sound. I thought it would be, yeah, but maybe. Regarding the idea of brownfield, of brown infrastructures, that was actually, I didn't know it was already out there. It was something that I had in mind because, you know, when you are especially working in this context, like Asmara, you open the Google Earth map, it's all brown and no green. And so really embracing the brown infrastructure is a really a good starting point to acknowledge all the benefits that these ecosystems provide. And this is also one of the limitations of the approach that we propose, this matrix-based approach, which so if you saw the ecosystem service maps in Eritrea, they were almost red, you know, as if there is no potential of providing ecosystem services, and this is clearly yeah, and a disadvantage of the approach that we are applying, which was probably not taught for this kind of climatic conditions. It was basically developed in Germany, and so definitely this should be something that we should work on. And what does it mean applying this kind of methods in this kind of climatic conditions? Can we, yeah, tweak a little bit the system so that we account for the actual and the potential supply of ecosystem services? And yeah, I think there would be really a lot of studies needed for for these African landscapes. But one thing that we shouldn't forget is that something that is not studied doesn't mean that it's not appreciated by the people, because those landscapes are actually lived by people who really appreciate them and really know them very well. It's just that the scientific community is perhaps lagging behind to capture this kind of local values and to make sure that, yeah, they are somehow made again available to the communities so that they can make better informed decisions. Yeah.
Maimuna,
yeah. Hello, everyone. When the presentation was going on, you know, what came into my mind is this Great Green Wall initiative, you know, that runs from Senegal to Djibouti, and I thought it's been a challenge, you know, trying to have a Great Green Wall across Africa, and I thought this brown infrastructure thing, you know, was a good idea if it was going to address the problem. I know, of course, a lot of research has to go into it. So that was why I asked that question. Of course, I know that I mean, we have to do a lot of research. We know that also the soil, you know, is also good at storing carbon and stuff like that. But if we can do a lot of research on that, I think it will help Africa a lot, because we don't have the water to have a green landscape, a wet and a green landscape. We don't have that new infrastructure. We don't have it. So we have to think outside the box. We have to think whether nature itself, by giving us this kind of landscape, has some kind of a solution, without, we don't have to go to maybe get it green and wet or anyhow. So that was just my thought when the presentation was going on. I found it really, really, really very, very interesting, because it will, if we look deep into it, it will help with a lot of our challenges here. Thank you.
Thank you, Maimouna. And
I think, okay, okay, we have Said maybe that want to say something.
yes, sure. Yeah, Dr. Said. Can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I am from Pakistan, and I am working as assistant professor in Department of Environmental Sciences. So I have a question about this landscape. What are the potential trade-off between short-term adaptation needs and long-term mitigation goals in African landscape, particularly related to land use change, especially for carbon emission and adaptation finances, something like that? Did you get what I said?
Yes, but are you addressing this question to a particular speaker, or would you just open it for the floor?
It's open. It's open for everyone. So I want to ask about the short-term adaptation needs and long-term trade-off, especially related to land use changes, carbon emissions, and adaptation finances, especially for African, landscape.
Bilal, Minal, if any of you would like to comment on that, based on your experience.
Yeah,
I know
yeah, maybe.
it's a very big question.
Yeah, Manal, would you like to go, or shall I?
Thank you.
Come on, Bilal, please.
Okay.
Sorry?
Yeah, ma'am. Yes, thank you, Said, for this nice question. I will try to give it a shot. So, starting from this Eritrean case study, I think our starting point was that really knowing what is going on is the very starting point. Of course, we in our case we focused on the recent changes because that was the data that was available. But you can go as back as maybe the 1970s to through some remote sensing data to have a clear understanding of where we are. And then the next step is really deciding where we want to go. And of course, you can have, let's say, assessment of the potential impacts of the different strategies that you may want to take. And again, this ecosystem service modeling can give you, let's say, an idea of what are the different trade-offs between different ecosystem services. And yeah, so in our case, for example, for the Eritrean case study, we considered a study in Asmara, the capital city, and looking at, let's say, a 10-year planning horizon, what could be optimal investments in the watershed or in the landscape to meet specific goals related, for example, to water security, vis-a-vis maybe rural poverty alleviation initiatives. And I think these kind of tools are very helpful and can help decision makers to explore different potential adaptation scenarios and possible trade-offs between those short and long-term goals that you were mentioning. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Another question that is so interesting for me. I want to become landscape research group member. So how can I participate? So I'm really enthusiastic to be a part of landscape research group. Can you please guide me?
You would be very welcome, Saeed. I'll pop the link into the chat.
Okay,
Thank you, so nice of you. Can you please provide me some email for the, I want to contact with you, future collaboration and research, other things. So can you please provide your email or research contact?
sure, we will. I think we can circulate it easily. If all the speakers are okay with that, we can do it.
Yeah, I send you on my email address, Saeed, and Lincoln.
Yeah, Emily, you had your
Thank you.
hands up.
Yeah, I did, and it was to Bilal Manel. Bilal, you put at the end a quote from the European Landscape Convention about landscape and what is landscape, and it was. And then Manel, I know you've been involved in our Maghrebian Landscape Research Network, looking at, or exploring to see whether it's a possibility of a landscape convention. Do you think that's something that that would be a positive development for the continent? And if so, would it go for the whole continent, or would it just be a section that you'd have to divide up? That's to both of you.
Can I?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. I just want to add something about Maghrebian landscapes. I'm not professional of African landscape, but just for the case, the Maghrebian landscape, I think that we have an urgent need to draw up a study or a convention for this type of landscape. Why? Because they are similar, and also they are different from other landscapes, such as European landscape or other African landscape. And when we have when we should find the solution or the response for what's the changing, what solution for this climate changing, etc. I think first step is to gather all our lessons from what do this landscape. So we have the habit to forget the culture and what seems to be like a spirit of these landscapes. So in the policies, we also keep out and leave out this kind of criteria. I don't know how to say it, but I always say that we should find indicators which are learned from the culture of this culture that made this landscape, even the intangible values. So we can't stop this changing because the solution is in the past. And in the past, the inhabitants they had a solution. They had solution for water, for even there was not rain, but they have a solution for this. So for the Maghrebian countries, I think Algeria, Tunisia, and even Morocco, we should learn from this, and we have the urgent need to draw up finally this study, or I don't know, this convention or this policy. Yeah.
Jens, please.
Sure. Thank you so much, Manel and Bilal, and to the others. You spoke directly to the question, Manel. I'm sorry. Now I'm without a question, basically. I noticed how you both presented on very different geographic contexts, right? And also cultural contexts, but you used very similar vocabulary: green infrastructure, brown infrastructure, and so on. So this language, like, it allows us to speak, in particular this English language or this Western language allows us to speak now in this specific forum, right? And understand each other to some degree, but it also has limitations, right? So Bilal also spoke about how you engage communities, for example, right? And then that was what you were also saying, Manel, I think, like when you speak to communities, suddenly that vocabulary is limited, no? Because you cannot grasp let's say, spirituality or other, other forms of knowledge and intimacy with the land in this in this kind of, more formal research, scientific language. So I was just wondering if you spoke already about it, about the limitations that you encountered in your research by kind of adopting this very scientific approach, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, it actually makes lots of sense. And we actually do not have, for example, in Arabic, a good, I don't know, alternative for landscape. Just from the beginning, just from the basic, the landscape in itself doesn't have, I don't know, a definitive, alternative in Arabic. And this is also a massive, I would say, limitation for landscape studies as it is studied in, the Western context. So yeah, I totally agree with you, Jens. It's totally important to have and to embrace more local knowledge on that and for more community engagement. So yeah, this is really, really interesting and really, really a good, a very, massive limitation for us. And I think also it's about borrowing or trying to copy Western-based concepts into our context is always a challenge. I think yes, it's important to learn from each other, but when it's very, 100% copied, it's very different, and it's another burden on, I think, researchers from our context to actually try and find what we read in books into our context. It's really hard, and I really struggled with such things in my PhD, for example, and in my ongoing research. And just recently, I tried to change my perspective a bit to make things, work. Because other than that, we won't find any green infrastructure, as was Gabby, discussing in her talk. It's really interesting to see how green infrastructure, grew out of Europe, which is very wet and green, and we don't have nor wet nor green. So what are we going to do if we're going to study green infrastructure? But that doesn't say that it's not important for our context as well. But we just have to, adapt and recontextualize and understanding through the context rather than copying it. So I think this is really important. Yeah. If anyone would like to comment, I think we went far and beyond our time. I understand and really appreciate all of your, perseverance with us today. So if anyone have final comments or questions, we'd love to have it. Otherwise, we can conclude.
Just a quick comment, Maham, is if we would like to continue this conversation in some way and continue to support your research as well. So please get in touch. You've got my email address there, and we can carry on perhaps organising another event or something like that, however we can support you.
Yeah, and we have also our landscape research funds opening up soon next year. So you're all welcome to, send your proposals in.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us. And it was a really nice session. And yeah, looking forward for the next events.
Thank you, Bilal.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
everybody, for attending
Sorry.
and speakers.
Yeah. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Marham. Thank you, dear participant. Just I want to say that I'm sorry for my English. So it will be more interesting if I could speak in French and answer to all the questions. So sorry. Another time, I think I will do my best to answer all questions. Thank you.
Really, you're great. So do not just do that to yourself. It was really amazing, and we really enjoyed your talk and your discussions. Thank you for all your time and efforts for doing this with us. And looking forward to future events with LRG.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care. See you soon.
See you.
Bye-bye.